China is planning to build a nuclear power plant on the edge of the Gobi Desert that would be the first in the world to use molten salt as the fuel carrier and coolant.
80 years ago, the United States pioneered a revolutionary nuclear technology. Now, in an isolated stretch of China's Gobi Desert, that forgotten dream has roared back to life. China has just launched the world's first fully operational thorium molten salt reactor. And while most of the world is still obsessed with uranium, Beijing has leapfrogged into the future with a safer, cleaner, nearly waste-free alternative. Could this silent shift reshape the world's energy dominance? The fuel America left behind. Once upon a time, thorium was America's next big thing. Buried in beach sands and abundant across the globe, this silvery metal had the power to change everything about nuclear energy. It didn't explode. It didn't produce long-lived waste, and it couldn't be weaponized. In fact, back in the 1950s and 1960s, scientists at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee were seriously exploring thorium as the future of atomic power. They even built a working prototype reactor powered by it, a molten salt reactor, which we'll get to in a bit. But then something strange happened. The US walked away. Not because thorium failed, but because it couldn't help build bombs. Thorium is a fertile element, meaning it needs to absorb a neutron to become uranium-233, which then fissions to release energy. That's great for energy, but not for weapons. So while thorium was safe, efficient, and abundant, uranium and plutonium were better suited for Cold War stockpiles. The military dictated the energy direction, and thorium was left behind, gathering dust in the archives. This abandonment wasn't just short-sighted, it was tragic. Thorium doesn't produce the same dangerous isotopes that uranium does. It's resistant to meltdown scenarios, doesn't create bomb-grade waste, and its radioactive byproducts decay within a few hundred years, not tens of thousands. In short, it's the kind of nuclear fuel the world wishes it had embraced, but didn't. Why? Because in the Cold War mindset, dual use was everything. If your reactor couldn't also churn out weapons-grade material, it wasn't worth the investment. The US threw its weight behind light water reactors powered by uranium, which could feed both civilian grids and nuclear arsenals. Thorium, with all its peaceful potential, became an inconvenient footnote. But the story doesn't end there. In the 1990s, much of the research from Oak Ridge was declassified. The blueprints for the molten salt reactor were released to the public. Anyone could access them. Anyone could build on them. And one country quietly took notice, not to build bombs, but to build the future. So if the US had the technology all along, what exactly was it? And why was it considered too advanced to use? Molten salt. Imagine a nuclear reactor with no pressure, no boiling water, no risk of meltdown, and almost no waste. Sounds like a fantasy, right? That's exactly what molten salt reactor, MSR, technology promised over 60 years ago. And yet, it was deemed too radical, too unfamiliar, and too politically inconvenient to pursue. Until now. Here's how it works. Instead of using solid uranium rods submerged in pressurized water, MSRs dissolve nuclear fuel, like thorium or uranium-233, directly into a molten salt mixture. That glowing liquid circulates through the reactor, transferring heat to a turbine system that produces electricity. Because the salt has an incredibly high boiling point, over 1,400 degrees Celsius, there's no need for pressurized systems. That means fewer moving parts, less chance of rupture, and almost no risk of a catastrophic steam explosion. But the real beauty of the design lies in its safety. Underneath the reactor sits a plug of frozen salt, kept solid by active cooling. If the power fails, whether from an earthquake, cyber attack, or even war, the cooling stops, the plug melts, and the liquid fuel drains into passive storage tanks where the reaction stops naturally. No explosions, no meltdowns, just gravity and chemistry doing their job. The Oak Ridge team in the 1960s ran a molten salt reactor for years. It worked. It produced power. It was clean, safe, and reliable. So why was it abandoned? because it didn't fit the playbook. Light water reactors were already being rolled out across the country. There were contracts, suppliers, and infrastructure built around uranium. Switching to MSRs would have meant rewriting the entire nuclear industry. Not to mention, MSRs couldn't produce plutonium-239 for weapons. And in the Cold War, that mattered. So who finally picked up the torch? And where is this radical reactor running today? Inside China's silent breakthrough